Hey guys, what's going on? Today we're going to be going through in the Kern Creation shop and we're going to be machining out a small fire hydrant that just so happens to correspond with a motorcycle carburetor. Um, Basically the whole thing is going to be machined out of solid aluminum with some hardware that we're going to make by hand in shop out of some brass. Um, this is a basic idea of what we're going for, so without any further ado, let's get started. Basically, we're going to start off with a piece of solid 3-inch round bar. Um, Again, 6061 aluminum. Pop it onto the bandsaw and cut it off, and then we're going to get to turning. Um, Whole thing is going to be trimmed down. We could have gone through and done this out of a few separate pieces, but I kind of really wanted to cut it down by hand. So what we're doing is just kind of taking the outside edges down to get it to the shape that we want it to be in. So um, the aluminum cuts really, really nicely on this thing. Um, Old Craftsman lathe, and we're just gonna have a good time. Here we're going through cutting up the shoulder that's going to be the base of the top of the fire hydrant. Um, at this point, we're going to mark out where we want the holes. Those are going to be the bolt ring. To get the holes in the bolt ring, I don't have a milling machine or um, rotary table or anything like that. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use the lathe and a Dremel for that. By locking the lathe headstock in place, we can actually put a Dremel into the tool post and just use the drill bit to cut right through. Everything will be concentric, but we'll be able to have everything lined up and indexed the way that you would on a milling machine. Um, Going through, there's 60 indexing holes on this particular lathe, which means for 10 of them we just go 6 notches and then drive them all through. So now we're going to go through and mark out the sides so that we can get those side pieces in there. Basically, I lined it up the holes with the quill of the drill press and then went to it. So now we're going through and cutting off those pieces that are actually going to become those side plates. Got to be center hole drilled and made room to put a bolt through. We're going to face off both sides, get it nice and straight and square, and then just drill on through. And now we got to attach them somehow. So we're going to use a piece of half-inch brass rod, hex bar, and we're going to make our own bolts to hold that all in place. Start off with facing them all off, take some cuts off of the side to get it down to the size we need in order to cut the threads. We're going to be going with a 5/16 thread on this one. So go through with the 5/16 18 die and cut the threads on. Um, what I typically like to do is actually hold the workpiece in the lathe so that it keeps everything straight and square while we go through and thread it. Um, just typically it gives a little bit better results, I think. So this is kind of an overview of the gear train of the lathe itself. You'll be able to see where all the energy gets put through the different gears to get your auto feed on the compound to go the way it wants to. So bringing it up, get a nice clean cut, bring it right up to that shoulder of the bolt, and we're good to go. You can throw the die on there and cut our threads. So now we have our threads cut, but we're going to have to get the next piece started. So back to the bandsaw, cutting off this piece. Now, these pieces are a little bit too big for my 3-jaw chuck, so what I typically do is go over to the 4-jaw, and then I use a dial indicator to dial it in. It's not perfect. I mean, we're a couple thousandths off, but it's honestly for what we're doing, we're just having fun. We're just making art, so it's all right to be a little bit off center. So we're going through basically the same things we did before, but this time we're going through and making the base of it. Um, Same thing with the bolt ring at the bottom, tapping that all out. Um, but now what we're going to do is center drill them and thread them. Now, putting the side pieces on, we're going to need a washer. So I have a piece of 1-inch solid brass bar. We're going to shape it over with the file, then center drill it, and then use a part-off blade to cut our own um, washers. And those will go right between, just like this. We'll go bolt, washer, and then that piece right into the side of the aluminum that we've already machined out. So in order to do that, we're going to need some female threads. So got a tap there, and we're going to go through and tap the side hole here, get it ready to accept those bolts. Um, they'll thread right in there, and we'll be good to go. So now we have all that. We have to have the nose piece of the hydrant itself. I didn't have a piece quite as small as I wanted to, well, quite the size I wanted to. So what we're going to do is go with a 2¼ inch piece of um, aluminum, and that's small enough to fit into the 3-jaw. And we're just going to turn it down and get the piece that we need that way. Um, so we're just going to go through and kind of trim the sides, get it all squared up and ready to go. Um, so here we're going to get ready to do the center hole, drill that all out so that we can use the boring bar and get it cut to the size that we need. Kind of putting the lathe on double duty right now so that we can drill and take the side cuts. And now we're on to the boring bar. And what this will do is actually open up that hole and enlarge it to the point where it's the size that we need it to be. So um, getting a nice cut there. Now we're going through with the part off blade to get that popped off of there. And now we need a place to put it on the side. So the way that I'm going to do that is, now that I have the two pieces on either side, those will be a good way to center the piece in the drill press. And then all I'll do is brace everything down, use those two to hold it straight, and then when we go through, it should hold everything square. So just going through, center drilling it. Now I have to go through with another drill bit in the center so that the Forstner bit has a place to set the center point of it. And then we just drill that right in there. May not be the proper way to do this using the Forstner bit, but it works. So now I didn't like that hole in the center, so what we're going to do is cut a cone to go on the inside of it, more reminiscent of the center of the carburetor. Just tapping out that hole right there so that we can feed it into it. Wouldn't really do any good if we couldn't attach it. So just going through, tapping that out. I think that's another 5/16 18. Then we're using my handmade die holder. And what that allows me to do is just feed it straight on the lathe. I can put a round threading die into it and then feed it in with a live center. And then I can take that handle off and twist it off by hand once it's in there, so we're able to power feed. Here we're just cutting a little bit of a taper to it and then parting it off, and that'll give us the cone shape that we need. But now to get the other side, we're going to need to get a way to hold it in the lathe. So what I'm doing is taking a piece of 1-inch hex bar, center drilling that and tapping that to the threads we've already done. Neat little trick is, if you want to thread something straight, there's actually a little hole in the back of the tap holders that'll hold that straight so you can feed it in there. So now we're just going through and kind of cutting that inside cone. My cutting tools didn't quite reach in there the way that I wanted to. There wasn't quite enough clearance, and I tried to grind a new one, but it just wasn't giving me the results I wanted. So we're actually going to go through with a file and fine tune all that. So once we have that, twist right in there, fits in perfect and goes good. So now we got to cut that dome. So back to the bandsaw, cutting off another piece of that 3-inch bar. Again, back to the 3-jaw, getting that dialed in, trying to get it all straight so we can get a nice smooth cut. And then just cut after cut after cut, trying to get it squared away. So we're taking a fairly heavy pass here for this little machine, um, but it can handle it. It's laid aluminum, nice sharp cutter. We're not having much of a problem there. Quick little face off on the side, center drill it so that we can put that third bolt that we cut off into. I'm getting that all ready. Now, the problem that I'm going to have here next is that I need to flip it around to face off the other side, and there's no way that the 3-jaw will grab onto the rounded dome, so what we're going to have to do is flip it around now, do the facing and everything, um, and cut it down. Now I'm just using a spring caliper to measure it. Not the most precise way to do it, but to be honest with you, we're just having fun. This is just art, so it's all right. We just gonna want to get it close, so dial it back in, and now we're gonna cut that dome. So never cut a dome before, so a radius turning has been kind of interesting. So what I'm doing is cutting a couple of facets. Started with a 45-degree facet, then we went to a 67.5-degree, and now a 22.5. And what that'll do is just kind of give us 3 different faces that start to form the dome, and then it's all just handwork. We're just going to go through and twist both knobs at the same time and try to get it shaped away. And with that, I think we did a we did a pretty good job getting that all squared away. Just had to keep pulling the chips off, make sure that it's all kind of hard to see with the chips in the way, and then it's off to the file and sandpaper and get all those little machine marks off and bring up the finish on it. So once that was done, we can pop it out of there, set it up there, and we finally getting a look at what it's going to look like.
Alright guys, so from here on out, the mood of the video is going to change a little bit. Basically, about halfway through the build, we decided that it was time to move to a different area. What that meant is a new shop. So I kind of kicked around the idea, maybe I can knock it all out before we go. Really, I don't think that would be the best thing. We don't want to rush through it, risk messing something up. So I then thought, well, maybe we could fake it with the lighting, make it all look like it was done in the old area. But to be honest with you, this is the reality of it. We're in a new shop, a new setup, a new layout. We're going to get it done. We're going to get it done here.
Quick overview of the new shop, and we're back into it. So now we just want to go through and build some small bolts to go into the bottom. I cut the rest of them off camera, but I figured you guys might want to take a look at what some of them are. So we're just going to go through and do that real quick. So we're starting with actually 1/4-inch brass hex bar with this one, and we're cutting our own bolts. They're threaded to an 832 thread, and we're just kind of cutting them down, put the die on there to cut the threads, and then cutting them off. What I like to do when cutting bolts like this is I typically start the die in one direction and then flip it over because it's got a taper cut into it. And if you turn it around, you can actually bring your threads pretty much right up to the shoulder, where if you kept it straight, there's a little bit of a taper and you're not going to get the same finish that you're looking for. So we'll go through, we'll get these all cut and threaded and all that, and we'll have a few more bolts. So again, parting them off, just running the lathe and making parts basically. A little bit of an overview of the lathe table. I still need to clean up a little bit. Um, got another toolbox that's going to be coming in shortly, but until then, this is what we got. So now, flipping them around in the 3-jaw, we're just going through, facing off the end of it where it's got the little nub from cutting off, and then hitting it with a file just to round it over a little bit, give it a little bit more finished look. We want it to still look like a professional bolt here, not something that you just threw together. So just cleaning everything up, making it look better, and getting a handful of bolts. So now we're going to kind of break down the um, center section so that we can tape it all off and mark it to know where to drill out the holes. So just using some electrical tape to hold it together, and then using the spool itself to hold it propped up, we can go through and center punch all of the holes with a transfer punch so that we can mark everything out. Now, I've never tried any of these drilling tap bits, but they did give me a really good finish. Really didn't want to go out and buy another tap and die set, and my big tap and die set is still in the toolboxes that haven't been moved to the new shop yet. So we're just kind of making do with what we got. So now I gotta go through with that top and get the holes drilled. So best way that I could figure out is we're gonna take a block of wood and drill out a hole that that dome can fit into. Just tap it into place, and now we have a way to hold the work surface so that we can drill out those holes. So just popping it onto my father's drill press. Actually, we're at his shop now, and getting them all drilled out. Go through with the file to clean up any burrs that popped through, and now we can put all those new bolts that we just made into place and see how she looks all together. A little bit of Loctite to get everything permanently attached, and we're on the home stretch here. A little bit of super glue to hold the top piece to the bottom along with the Loctite. We'll keep that all as one piece. Now we're just going through with a 1/4-inch wrench and tightening down all of those little bolts. A little bit of Loctite again, like I said, to hold everything in place, and we got it. So we're going to show off a little bit here with the light and stuff and get a nice look at it, and there you go. There's our fire hydrant. We made it, and we're good to go. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Have a good one, guys.